Size doesn't matter, says Fiio. Hello and thank you for clicking on this video where I'll be talking to what I think could be the potential successor to one of my favorite dongle DACs from Fiio, which is the KA13, and this is the Fiio KA15. This dongle DAC comes at a price of $109, but before we dive deeper into all its features, because there are plenty, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Fiio for sending this unit in exchange for my honest feedback. However, as always, all thoughts and opinions are my own and are not influenced by any parties. If you've been enjoying what I've been putting out, I hope you consider helping me reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers by hitting that like and subscribe button. I'd appreciate it a lot. The unboxing experience is pretty standard, where opening the box you'll be greeted by the unit itself. It also comes with a USB to USB-C cable, which is pretty short, so you can use it for when you're walking around, but for desktop use you're going to want something longer. And it also comes with a sleeve, which is a nice little touch. It has full leather feel to it with some stitching, but for my sleeve, I find that it doesn't grip to the unit, so there are plenty of times I'm trying to unplug my IEMs from the KA15 and I ended up unsleeving the whole thing instead. Not a huge deal breaker, but just something to note. For the design of the KA15, think a miniature sized version of a cassette tape player. While it may not look it at first glance, but once the interface turns on, the design theme for the KA15 becomes much clearer. You have the USB-C input on one side, a 3.5mm and 4.4mm output on the other, and then a menu button with a plus and minus for volume and function control, and also a button to toggle between desktop mode and normal mode. So like a cassette tape player, the design is pretty much square throughout, including the buttons, which I feel is a really nice touch and look. Kinda brings back a bit of a nostalgic feel while giving it a modern twist. When it comes to form factor, just when you think the KA13 is compact, the KA15 comes in a form that is slightly smaller in length, maybe just a touch wider, but as an overall, it's very small and it makes it very easy to carry the KA15 around, especially when you're traveling. So for a dongle DAC, I think Fiio hit the ball out of the park with the KA15. It does come in blue and silver as well, but there's something sleek about the black, just looks like a cassette tape for me. So let's go through some of the functions and features of the KA15, but something to note before we continue, my unit fresh out of the box had the language settings set at Mandarin, so if you do get that for your unit, don't be alarmed. Simply go to the menu button by double pressing it and clicking your plus and minus button until you reach this wording. Press the menu button one more time to change it, and it should change it to English. Once this is set, you don't have to change it back unless you accidentally reset your dongle, which I have, and it's a pain to cycle through and find it again. So for button controls, aside from the desktop mode switch, you have the plus and minus for volume control, which can be used to forward and backwards track if you press and hold for a few seconds. And the menu button has the pause and play function by pressing once. Pressing twice will turn the screen on and off, and press and hold will bring up the menu, and you can cycle it by pressing the menu button once again. And the minus and plus will be the toggle for these functions. It's a bit of a minor inconvenience as it's a cycle through the menu and there's no way to go backwards, so if you accidentally press the menu button too fast and miss the function you wanted to be at to begin with, you'd have to cycle it through again. Just takes a bit of patience, but at least if you're there and you go out and press the menu button again, it'll stay where it was before, so it's good when you're playing around with the EQ. So just going through what the KA15 has in their menu, starting on with the filters, you've got different type of filters to choose from. Unfortunately, from my experience, I couldn't notice a huge difference between each filters, so I just stuck with the fast LL, but your preferences may vary, but at least there's that option. Next feature, which is a lot more interesting, which is EQ. So there's a few EQ presets in this dongle for you to choose from. So they have the typical presets like jazz, hip hop, vocals, but not only that, they also have Fio's own IEM EQ presets like the FH3, FF5 and FD15. So you can have a preview of how these IEM sounds like. And of course, it's probably not going to be 100% match because different driver configurations and all that, but at least tuning wise, you can roughly hear what they're going for on those IEMs. And I wished more company had this just for the fun factor. In terms of changes to the sound, you do hear a significant change, and they did this weird thing where they reduced the volume to have the EQ presets working, so something to be aware of, as turning turning the EQ off will result in a huge bump in volume to the sound, so you might want to adjust before you continue playing. I personally feel the changes to the sound is a bit too drastic for my liking on the presets, like the hip hop has the bass overblown to the point where it sounds a bit boomy, so I typically end up turning the EQ settings off, but at least there's some options for you depending on your mood on the day. However, this EQ function opens up a little bit more with the app, more on that later. So continuing on with the functions and features, you have the volume mode where you're toggling between dB or A, so it's a preference thing. Key mode, which is toggling what the plus and minus function does. So in A mode, the buttons does what I mentioned earlier, and in B mode, clicking plus and minus once forwards and previous tracks, and holding on the plus and minus toggles the volume. And I personally prefer the key mode A, but at least there's other options for you if you want. DAC mode, where you can toggle between class A, B and class H functions. If you're interested to know between each class, I'll leave links in the description down below. Balance, where I'm assuming if there's channel imbalance, you have the option to adjust the balance. There's also options to toggle SPDIF on or off. UFC mode 1 or 2.0. If you want to connect the KA15 to your console, you can switch it to 1.0 mode, whereas if you're using it on your desktop, you can change it to the 2.0 mode. Again, links in the description if you want to know more about this mode. Changing brightness levels, and you can go up to 10, but even at 5 is already bright enough. Option to change the screen rotation if you like. There are options to adjust screen timeout. Shortest is about 15 seconds, while longest is 30 minutes, so huge range there. Voltage and charge display if you want to see how much voltage is being put out, otherwise you'll just have the tagline born for music instead if you toggle this function off. Theme and style, where you can choose between 4 different designs for the KA15. Personally, I went with black because it's the obvious design choice, at least for me, but you've got 4 colors to choose from. Fiio did say that they may have other designs coming up, so I hope that's true, as it would be really cool to see what they could do here. Language toggle as shown earlier, firmware check, and of course the reset button to factory default. All in all, Fiio has thought of everything. The KA15 pushes the boundaries of what you can have in a dongle and just adds more. And maybe I haven't been exposed to this kind of technology on other dongles, so I'm curious to know, but as of now, the KA15 is chock full of features, and it shows that you should never judge something by its size. That's right, ladies, you heard me. So Fiio has its own app as well if you prefer to control the device from your phone rather than the device itself. The app is called Fiio Control, and after downloading that and connecting the KA15 to your phone, just click the plus button on the top right and the KA15 will appear as one of the options to connect. This was recently added, as the first time I tried this it wasn't there, but it is now, hence I'm able to include this portion into this video. Once you're connected to the device, there are 4 tabs to play around with. It's pretty much the menu function being laid out in app mode for ease of use, so instead of having to cycle through the menu option to get to what you want to toggle, you can turn it all here from the app, which I find very convenient. The status tab essentially has the display rotation, UAC, language, brightness adjustment, and power off timer settings. Then there's the audio tab where you have the DAC mode, volume control mode, audio, channel balance control, and also filter mode. And with the app, it shows you the differences if you know how to read what each filter does to the sound. There's also a guide tab, which is the instruction manual on how to use this device in case you need to refresh your memory on how to use the KA15. And best of all, there's a EQ setting tab. So it comes with all those presets shown earlier, but what the app does is show you what they've done with the tuning, what they've increased or decreased in the frequency. Unfortunately, you can't adjust the EQ setting on the presets like the jazz or hip hop, but there are 3 profiles that you can play around with, and it's within the FF5, FH15 and FH3 EQ settings, where in one of these profiles you can either adjust it from the set EQ, or if you don't like it, you can press the reset button and it'll reset all settings to 0, and you have a 10 band EQ setting to play around with. And once you're satisfied with your tuning, you can save it over and it'll automatically rename it based on your preference. If you do, however, want to bring back the FH15 tuning, Fiio did provide you with that tuning plus a few more saved tuning that you can download into your app, and it's a matter of clicking the user profile and going to the local tab and applying the downloaded EQ preset over, and it'll override the current user profile. It may all sound a little bit complicated at first, and I feel it's a matter of taking the time to play around with the settings and have a bit of trial and error to fully utilize this feature, and once you get used to it, it opens a lot of doors. I do have to admit my first few attempts trying out this section was a little buggy. There are times where pressing on the presets didn't change anything. I couldn't change or adjust any of the EQ settings on the customizable option, and it kept saying it's not a customizable EQ setting. I couldn't apply the downloaded EQ profile, so what I had to do was close the app, unplug the KA15 and plug it back again, and it went back to normal. So probably some software update could fix this issue and make it a lot more smooth and stable. Another issue I found is that the device itself doesn't seem to update the user profile naming based on what you named it, and is stuck on the FF5, FH15 and the FH3 naming in the KA15 device. So maybe this is another thing a software update can fix, because I don't know which of the device naming refers back to which user profile. So I just toggle it from my app, but as an overall, the app just makes the KA15 a lot more powerful, and it just opens the doors, as mentioned earlier, to so many possibilities to adjust the sound to your liking. In terms of power, with desktop mode turned on, it can output up to 180 milliwatts on the 3.5 or single-ended and 560 milliwatt on the balanced output, which is to say it's going to be powering a lot of IEMs or even headphones in your collection. And I had no trouble powering headphones with the KA13, which is about similar in terms of output performance with the KA15, then the KA15 should have no issues as well. Speaking of the Fiio KA13, so I've already had my comparisons between the KA13 with other sources, which I'll leave a link in the description down below. So what I'll do instead is compare the KA15 with the KA13 to see if you are indeed getting an upgrade. And in terms of functions and features, it's a no-brainer that the KA15 simply brings more to the table. Putting Fio's apps aside, the KA13 is a simple plug and play with the benefit of having desktop mode switch. The KA15 is pretty much the KA13 with more functions and features, like the EQ presets, the filters. You just get a lot more from your music from the KA15, but of course it comes at a cost, which is about that $30 difference between the two. Also, just quickly comparing between their power, the KA13 is only 10 milliwatts lesser than the KA15. So if you're thinking you're spending more for more power, unfortunately that is not the case. However, they are both sufficient to power most of your IEMs and headphones in your collection, unless you're planning to use a Susvara, then just don't use a dongle. So what you're getting for the additional $30 are all the features mentioned above that the KA13 does not have, and that may play a huge part in your purchasing decision. But for me personally, I feel that $30 is justified with the amount of features that the KA15 comes with, and that in itself is an upgrade from the KA13. But if you're really tight on a budget and you just don't want to play around with functions and features, then the KA13 is still available as an option for you. So comparing with something that I've been using on the daily, the iFi Audio Go Bar Kensei. I absolutely love this dongle, from the build quality to the feel to its features. I've been daily driving this thing and I haven't found something to replace it with, and the KA15 comes really close to it, and for a fraction of its price. That's quite an achievement in itself. When it comes to sound, I had to shake off my memory of the Go Bar Kensei when I'm testing the KA15, because switching from the Go Bar Kensei, the KA15 does sound a touch flatter in its presentation at its base setting with no EQ turned on. The Go Bar Kensei sounded much fuller in its presentation, and there's a bit more openness to it as well, and this is without all the features turned on, including X bass or X bass. So in terms of how these dongle influences sound, I tend to lean towards the Go Bar Kensei for my own personal preference. However, in terms of power, the KA15 on desktop mode is outputting more power than the Go Bar Kensei. In terms of features, the KA15 has a lot more options for you to play around with multiple filters, EQ presets, and also with the app, as mentioned many times times earlier, it just brings so much possibilities. The iFi Audio Go Bar Kensei still brings a few features to the table, just not as much compared to the Fiio KA15, but the implementation of its features from the Go Bar Kensei is a lot more controlled, like the X bass or X space features, where it boosts an aspect of the frequency along with the rest of it, so it sounds like a natural boost rather than a bump in the frequency. And when it comes to convenience, especially if you're not into EQ, the Go Bar Kensei is a lot more user-friendly or convenient in that sense. There's also the K2 HD feature and some filters to play around with, but if you're a sound tinkerer and you love to play around with EQ, then the KA15 will suit you a lot better. So to sum it all up, I think everything I said about the KA15 above should indicate how much I like this dongle. I was a huge fan of the KA13, and pairing that with the Monarch Mark III with the Effect Audio Catmus wire was a sound harmony that I enjoyed. Before the Go Bar Kensei came along and took over the job as my daily dongle, and with the KA15, I feel it's the upgrade that I didn't know I needed from the KA13, but I'm glad I have, as it gives me so much to play with my music in a very compact form factor with an affordable price. And I gotta say, the Fiio KA15 is a slam dunk. Well done, Fiio. Now I'm curious what the KA17 then sounds like, since it's an older release to the KA15, but it's supposedly the next level up, especially in terms of price. That's another topic for another video. However, as always, these are all based on one man's experience, and I'm curious to know your thoughts. What do you think of the KA15, and will you be getting yourself one? Comment below and let me know. And with that all said, thank you again to Fiio for this opportunity, and to all of you for watching. See you in the next video.